I am Games, and these are opinions. I've seen a lot of controversy surrounding Mega Man 11's audio-visual presentation, with the graphics alternately described as gorgeous or garbage, and the soundtrack criticized as unmemorable or defended as okay. Initially, the decision to make a 2.5D game came as a shock to me in the wake of Mighty No. 9 receiving such a mountain of flack for its abysmal visual design, which contrasted the awesome artwork proposed by its Kickstarter, and I'm sure a lot of the skepticism over Mega Man 11's decision to go in this direction was a direct result of that, though I also think it's possible that this game was made to show up its competitor and to do justice to that aesthetic approach, the only question being whether or not it succeeded. Personally, I think the visual design is a huge success for the most part. Each level opens with a massive portrait background that immediately sets the tone of the stage and is instantly memorable, before transitioning into increasingly minimal backdrops as the challenges come to require more visual focus. In an uber-tight, pixel-precise action platformer like this, readability takes prominence over everything, and Mega Man 11 is careful to color its enemies in contrast with the stages even more often than some of the older games, while keeping projectiles as unmistakably bright and shiny as possible. Whereas many 2.5D platformers make the mistake of setting the camera at a tilted angle where it's more difficult to tell the exact parameters of platforms, necessitating looser jump precision in kind, this game smartly retains the flat side plane perspective of the classics, and even gives every surface an extra hard, ultra-readable top line so that you'll never ever mistake a walkable platform for a background element. Stage borders and enemy designs are all so classically Mega Man that I honestly couldn't tell you all of which enemies were new or old, and even being as minimal as they are, I could easily tell by just a screenshot which stage a screen belongs to thanks to their distinctive aesthetics, notwithstanding the fact I probably spent an hour dying on some of them. Granted, not every stage is equally memorable. Tundra Man, Fuse Man, and Acid Man have the most thematically coherent and aesthetically pleasing stages. Torch Man's is more memorable for its intense challenges and the interplay of fire and darkness, while Block Man's, besides the outdoor segments, almost feels intended to be somewhat generic and intro stagey, only noteworthy for the incredibly distinctive shade of teal used on its titular blocks. Bounce Man's stage is conceptually fun, though the bubbles don't animate so well. Impact Man's is serviceable but totally blends in with any other cave-based Mega Man level of the past, and Blast Man's is kind of a clusterfuck of disconnected elements, easily the least memorable in the game. Still, overall I would say this is visually among the stronger titles in the Mega Man oeuvre, and a very successful implementation of HD graphics into the classic formula, except when it comes to Mega Man himself. First of all, this walk cycle is unsatisfyingly even and glidey. Even the NES sprite has more hop in its step. Many of the enemy animations and effects are choppy as well, though at least everything looks buttery smooth at 60 frames a second, and it's pretty easy to forget how any of it animates when you're very quickly overwhelmed by so many on-screen elements to keep track of. Far more problematic than his movement though is Mega Man's hitbox. In the older games, Mega Man was basically a clear square, so it was very easy to gauge his placement on platforms or in relationship to enemies, whereas now it's a lot more difficult to let his hitbox size naturally melt into the back of your mind as you play. A huge number of deaths in this game came from hitting my head on the ceiling when I wasn't quite close enough to the edge of a platform, because it's harder to tell exactly how far you can go off the edge when there's such a greater distance between Mega Man's legs. One other place where the game's visuals utterly fail is in the cutscenes, although I won't hold this against the game too much considering that almost no one plays Mega Man for the story or is likely to even watch these, but it just feels like no effort was put into them at all. I'm sure one guy at Capcom just drew all these image boards in a day, and god is it jarring when you turn on the game and it starts auto-playing the intro cutscene. In-game scenes are no more engaging, being as they're all set in one side profile room, and just left me wondering why they even bothered. Minor complaints aside, for me the visuals were mostly a hit, while the soundtrack was more of a mixed bag. All of the music is crafted to sound like overproduced EDM, with an obnoxious sound font palette that makes it all bleed together, and the kind of attempts at atmosphere which feel like they're trying to mask a lack of impressive melodies, which is sad because they aren't. Weirdly, the OST includes these quote instrumental versions of the songs, which sound like perfectly well produced, fully realized and modern tracks with a full range of instruments, but just don't layer the EDM trappings over the melodies, and they are straight up 1,000 times better and should obviously have been used exclusively. Just listen to these two versions of the same song back to back. The instrumental one makes you realize that the EDM version even has a melody, and then wonder why they drowned it. Altogether, I think the instrumental versions of this OST form a pretty solid set of tunes and are at home in the Mega Man catalog, but the EDM versions are boring and I don't care for them. Anyways, if you want to hear more about the actual gameplay of Mega Man 11, check out our other video on the subject. Also head over to twitch.tv/IamGamesIamGames, where we do live streams every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. EST, Fridays at midnight, and you can watch those streams back in the playlist tab on this channel. Always remember to be the games you want to see. I Am Games, signing out.